Welcome back, sixth graders. We are ready to start chapter 5 of Dragonwings. Let's recap, though, what just happened in chapter 4 to make sure that we're all understanding. Black Dog seems to be getting in a little bit of trouble. In the last little bit that we read, the company started to go out and look for him. He's using opium, which, as we know from our studies, is a drug. And Windrider and Moonshadow go to what's called opium dens, which are just basically places where people hang out to go and take opium. And Black Dog was dragged out of one of them and was about to be shot. And Windrider and Moonshadow were hiding in the shadows, and Windrider whistled really loud to sound like a police whistle, and everybody ran. So they basically saved Black Dog's life. But when they approached him after everybody went away and they went to go and help him, he was like legitimately rude to them. And so I love this. Windrider just basically was like, you know what? Forget you. And punched Black Dog in the face, knocked him out, and then put him over his shoulder and took him home. I don't know. It's just pretty crazy. So now we're on chapter 5 and we're going to see what happens with Black Dog and the whole company from here on out. Chapter 5 is called Windrider's Claws, and this happens between February of 1904 and May of 1905, so nearly a year is going by throughout this chapter. All right, so we're on page 98. Let's get started. Later at the company, Uncle sat for a long time, figuring things on his abacus. The beads clacked as his fingers flew back and forth. Through the ceiling, we could hear Black Dog snoring upstairs. "The money can be made up out of my share," Uncle said. "Don't be an old fool," Father said. "There's not just the matter of the woman to be made up. There's the justices to be paid off." "No, Whiskey Devil, he's the head of the justices. Owes me a favor from a long time ago. It won't cost that much." "Still," White Deer said, "it ought to come out of all our shares. We can write it up to expenses." "He's my son," Uncle said sternly. "I'm responsible for him." "Money, money, money," Handclap said disgustedly. "Who cares about the money or where it comes from? The point is that any one of us could be a dopey and sleeping upstairs." Lefty massaged his right arm. Handclap was right. And it would not have been just a dope. It could have been gambling for me, or any one of 1,000 different traps that a Tang man could fall into in this demon's land. "Put it to a vote," White Deer said. "All those in favor of sharing the cost, put up your hands." He and Handclap put up their hands. "You're both fools," Uncle began. "Think of your families." "They do, old man," Father said. "That's why they're here. But this is their family, too. Now will you get talking to your justices?" Uncle slammed his abacus down on the table. "Who can talk to fools?" he grumbled, but there was a pleased look in his eye. As soon as Black Dog had recovered, he promised to reform. He sounded as if he meant it, but then he always did. And Handclap told me later. Black Dog kept his promise for a time. Pale and shaky, he moved about the laundry, working as hard as any of us. But after a while, he began to get snappish again, and to sneer at things. It was his way. I think he had lived so long in this land of the demons that his mind had become poisoned, and he had begun to think like a demon, and to despise the Tang people around him. Maybe when he had first begun to take dope, he had just meant to get away from his conflicts, but after a while, taking dope had become an end in itself. Now, quite a few of the older Tang people used opium. Everybody, including Father, would have an occasional pellet, but that was the way they might have a drink or gamble at the tables. But there were certain individuals who had gone over the edge who knew no moderation. Opium for Black Dog was what gambling had been for Lefty, but Lefty had stopped. more or less, at least compared to his old days. Black Dog's real problem was his inability to control himself. Finally, 1 month after we had brought him back, he disappeared. And on the next day when he came back, we smelled opium's strange sweet smell, like roasted peanuts clinging to Black Dog's clothes, and we knew where he had been. When I had been in the demon's country for over 2 years, Uncle sent me to make the rounds among some of our regular customers in the Tang people's town to collect overdue bills. As he said, even by the demon reckoning, it took 2 figures to write my age, for I was 11 by our system of counting and 10 by theirs. I had been collecting money for a month when I saw Black Dog lounging in a doorway, staring at the May rain. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I had to take a walk to get some fresh air." He stared up at the sky with a frown and pulled his collar up around his neck. The rain ran down the brim of his hat, splattering on his shoulders. "But it's a miserable day." "I guess," I said. I had the small canvas bag of money under my loose shirt. "Going back to the company?" "Why not?" Black Dog shrugged. He fell into step beside me, and we walked up the hill in silence. Black Dog folded his arms across his chest, almost hugging himself. Don't you hate it here?" "I don't like it, if that's what you mean. But White Deer says that hate is so strong a word that I ought to only use it for evil." "But there's another way to forget evil," Black Dog said. We stopped for a moment in a doorway when the rain fell harder. "Did you ever hear about how we got opium?" he asked finally. "The British demons forced us to let them sell it in the Middle Kingdom," I said. That's what some people say, who want to hide the truth, because they don't want to give the poor man his due. He was a poor working man like you or me, or who, no matter how hard he worked, always wound up owing more and more to the bosses. The only thing he owned outright was his ugly wife, maybe the ugliest woman alive. She was so repulsive that he beat her into the morning, and when he got up and beat her in the evening when he came home. The wife never complained because she loved him dearly. But finally, when she saw how much he hated her, she fell ill because she was so sad. On her deathbed, she called her husband to her and told him that after her death he would realize how much she loved him, despite everything he had done to her. At once the poor farmer felt sorry for what he had done, but before he could tell her, she died. 10 days later, the poor farmer noticed a strange white flower growing from her grave. There was a little round fruit inside the flower. At first, the poor farmer was afraid that his wife had turned into some poisonous flower. He could not sleep at night, thinking about the flower and what he had done to his wife. He could not work during the day, remembering the blows he had given her. "She has every right to hurt me," the poor farmer said, "for I have been a mean, spiteful man." With that, he fell sick himself. But he had no money to pay the doctors, nor any offspring to take care for him. And then one night, during a feverish dream, he saw his wife. She told him that the flower on her grave had been woven from the strands of her soul. The strange fruit in the flower could heal him. He was to cut the fruit and harden the juice that would come out and smoke it. If he smoked it every day, he would become healthy. The very next morning he got up and did as his wife had told him. And no sooner did he take his first puff than he felt his illness leave him. So it was that he and his wife were closer in death than they were in life. Black Dog smiled ironically. "So it is to those 2 lovers that I smoke, for the name of the ugly wife was Life, and the name of the farmer was Everyman." The only good thing I ever got out of my ugly life was the flower. I did not understand his story at all. But life isn't all ugly, I said. Don't you think it's ugly here? What kind of lives do we lead without wives and families? There's no money back at home. But why sacrifice yourself just so others can get fat at home? All they ever understand is that they need more money. Things will be better in the next life. Maybe we'll be born as the sons of noble families. Maybe we'll even finally find release from this world. Black Dog looked at me intently. Why shouldn't we get some pleasure in this life? Why later? Why not now? Because we don't owe things just to ourselves. There are others. He grabbed me by the arm, and his voice grew wild. Don't give me your simpering, mealy-mouthed answers. We've repaid our debts 12 times over. You're hurting me, I said. All the time in my mind I was telling myself that I must not be frightened. I must not be frightened. You don't know what pain is, Black Dog said. Wait till you have been here for 30 years. Then you'll welcome the pain. They were once as pleasant to me as they are to you. He twisted my arm. I let out a yell. I kicked him hard in the knee, and he let go of me with a grunt. I began to run up the hill. My hat flew off. I kept on running. I heard his boots come closer as he followed me. Suddenly, I felt a pain in the back of my head. He had grabbed my cue. I stopped short as he jerked at the cue and fell on my back. He tore the money bag away from me, but he did not even look at it. Pain, he said strangely. Pain, you don't know what it is. And he began to kick me with his heavy boots. When I came to, I was back in the company. Father was pressing a wet towel against my forehead anxiously. He's awake, he said. The rest of the company crowded around me. What beast did this to you, boy? Lefty asked. I found that I was not even mad at Black Dog. How could you be mad at some dumb, pain-goaded animal? I did not know what to do or say. The company looked so stern and solemn. But Uncle took it out of my hands. Was it Black Dog? He demanded. I did not say anything. Was it? Uncle asked. Yes, I said reluctantly. I'll cut off his head and throw it into the gutter where the dogs can eat it, Uncle said. How can you curse your own son that way? White Deer scolded him. He's no son of mine, Uncle declared. Father turned heavily in his seat. That's good to know. Then you'll let me take care of him. I should have let you or any one of the dozen men take care of him a long time ago. He's not a man. He's an animal, Uncle said. You won't do any such thing, Windrider, White Deer said. Black Dog is a member of the company. Kick him out, Uncle said. We'll put it to a vote, White Deer said. I say bring him to the police and let them handle it. Bring him to the demon police? Uncle asked. Yes, the demon police, Lefty said. Handclap nodded. Otherwise, White Deer reasoned, you'll have to take it up with the sleepers. They're not about to let anyone go around beating up one of their brothers without their permission, no matter what he's done. The justices were going to shoot Black Dog, Father pointed out. They asked the sleepers. You ought to know that, Lefty said. And the sleepers only gave their permission because they didn't want a war with the justices. I'll go to the sleepers myself, Uncle said grimly. They won't refuse me permission. No, Father let out his breath in a rush. No, I am sick of having to deal with thieves and pimps and pushers. I'm sick of having to scrape and bow to men who live off the misery of their brothers and sisters. Now, White Deer soothed. There are many good men in the Brotherhoods who earn their money as we do, and who don't deal with those things. It's only a small number who are criminals. The father whirled around to face White Deer. Don't you see? We're all tainted by it. As long as we keep quiet and let it go on, we're as bad as they are. It eats at them, it eats at us. The others were silent. Father might have slapped each one of them in the face. He should have kept his mouth shut then, but the dragonness in him would not let him. He had to speak his mind. We mustn't play their games anymore by their rules. They are our brothers, Uncle said, no matter how bad. That's why we don't go to the demon police. We Tang people take care of our own affairs. It's better that way. Remember the virtues of the stranger, the lonely man in foreign lands. Be silent, be cunning, be invisible. Besides, what's the use of going to the demons? The sleepers can afford to pay more bribes to the police than we can. The demons will just listen to our complaint and then file it away. Better go to the sleepers themselves. If you won't go to the demons, there's only one other way to make sure that justice is done, Father said, and that's to do it myself. There was something about his posture and the look of his eye that reminded me of dragons. All the others in the room could feel it too. Then I realized that to be a dragon meant more than just taking an interest in the magic of machines. It was also to live by the spirit of dragons, and Father felt that no dragon would let such an act go unpunished. Dragons, Father went on, protect their brood. Dragons, dragons, dragons. Always that nonsense, Uncle said impatiently. I think he instantly regretted his words, for Father's mouth hardened at that. Father sat back in his chair. It creaked under the shift of weight. When I was there on that beach and in the Dragon Kingdom, it was more real a time than this. Don't kill yourself for a foolish dream, Uncle insisted. He would not have said such a cruel things normally, but he was worried about Father. And besides, you promised. He glanced at me and was quiet. What promise? I asked. It was a long time before Father spoke. He folded his hands and looked at them while he talked. You do many strange things when you're young, and maybe the strangest thing you do is join a secret society that says it's dedicated to throwing out the Manchus. You enlist, you act as a soldier for the future of the Middle Kingdom. And then you realize that though they make a lot of patriotic speeches, at heart, they're only criminals. And did you do that? I was once a sleeper, Father said. The others left our room shortly after that. But we no sooner had turned off the gaslight and lain down than we heard a bump at the door. Father got up and opened it to see Lefty sitting in the hallway facing our door. The hallway was so narrow that though Lefty had his back against the wall, he had to draw his knees up toward his chest. By his left side he had a club. He smiled apologetically. Excuse me, Windrider. I meant to be quiet. Handclap should never have eaten so much squash. That one has so much gas that I cannot stand sleeping in the same room with him. So I've come out here for cleaner air. Right by my door? The air is cleaner here. Father slammed the door shut. Why should the air be cleaner here? I asked him. Be quiet, Father snapped. The fools are trying to keep me in. We had no window in our room, so the only way out was through the door. Father paced around the room. Finally, he seemed to notice me again. Go to sleep, Shadow. How do you expect me to be reborn again as a dragon if you act like a criminal? I asked him. Dragons have claws too. Uncle pushed me down on the mat and drew the quilt up around my neck. Now go to sleep. That's where we're going to stop. We're going to see what he means by having claws too, and we'll see what Windrider decides next time.